Welcome back to Snark and Spark. My name is Emily. This is Washington. That's Kennedy. Yes. Everyone's grumpy because everyone wants mom's attention, but mom can only give so much attention right now. I only have about 10 minutes to do this video because I have to go pick up Caden from an after-school party that he's at. And that's fine. But we're here. We're gonna make it work because today is my April TBR. And I have a lot to go over. So let's dive right in. First things first. If you are part of Magical Stitches, let's go over what our book club books are for. My book picks. You know what I'm trying to say. Let's jump in. So the book of the month for April that everyone will be reading is The Darkest Part of the Forest. This is a standalone novel that is still set in the world of faerie that Holly Black has created. So if you've been reading along, we have just finished the first trilogy, the Modern Fairy Tales trilogy that is over and done with in this month of March. April is The Darkest Part of the Forest. This was written significantly after that trilogy. This came out in originally came out in 2015, and then they, in recent years, in 2019, 2020, I noticed, so my editions are all newer. They went back and redid her covers of all of those books, including this one plus the Modern Fairy Tales, and I think they all are a lot more cohesive now. So these have a very similar aesthetic to the Modern Fairy Tales, which also have a very related look to the next series we'll get into, which you can see there is the Folk of the Air series, Cruel Prince, Wicked King, Queen of Nothing. That last one is a different standalone book what we're not reading. But this is the April book. This is following Hazel and her brother Ben, who live in Fairfold, where humans and folk exist side by side. Since they were children, Hazel and Ben have been telling each other stories about the boy in the glass coffin, that he is a prince and they are valiant knights. But as Hazel grows up, she puts aside those stories. Hazel knows the horned boy will never wake, until one day he does. Set in the same world as the best-selling Folk of the Air series and Tithe, Modern Fairy Tales. The Darkest Part of the Forest is Holly Black's triumphant return to the opulent, enchanting fairy tales that launched her career. So, we know they're all set in the same universe. You do not have to have read the first trilogy at all. You don't have to have read the Modern Fairy Tales. If you do, it's great. There's a nice little nod to some of the characters. They'll mention them by name, but there isn't, you don't have to know what's going on. And I didn't even get a nod to that first series until fairly late into the book. I will be finishing this book today, the day that I am filming, which is not the day that this video will go up. Next, I'm probably going to have to stop this to go get Caden and resume filming when I come back, and that's okay. So, that is the April book. Next, for the April cover color challenge, there are 3 options. Either a light green, a bright yellow, or a peach cover. As you know, I try to give you examples of each option, and along with telling you what I am going to be reading. So, for light green, I've got 3 examples. 2 of them are mysteries. This is The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley, a Flavia de Luce novel. This is set in England. It is the summer of 1950, and the once grand mansion of Buckshaw, young Flavia de Luce, and at the young once grand mansion, young Flavia de Luce, an aspiring chemist with a passion for poison, is intrigued by a series of inexplicable events. A dead bird is found on the doorstep, a post stamp bizarrely pinned to its beak. Then, hours later, Flavia finds a man lying in the cucumber patch and watches him as he takes his dying breath. For Flavia, who is both appalled and delighted, life begins in earnest when murder comes to Buckshaw. I wish I could say I was afraid, but I wasn't. Quite to the contrary, this was by far the most interesting thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. So this is the first book in this mystery series. To note, she is an 11-year-old girl, the main character of this book. I read this book. I loved it. My sister bought it for me. I read it like last year. It's great. I have not picked up any of the other books in this series, but I want to. I did really, really enjoy this, so this is my recommendation. But I've already read this book. I have a different mystery. I know nothing about this mystery series, but I grabbed it because it had a light green cover. This is Double Shot Death by Emmeline Duncan. It is a ground rules mystery, and this is going to be your cozy mystery. This is not a cozy mystery, in my opinion. This is probably a cozy mystery. This is... Sage Kaplan has taken her Portland coffee cart on the road to a sustainable music festival, but murder is an unwanted special guest. At Campathon, an annual eco-friendly festival held on a farm outside of Portland, fans celebrate the Pacific Northwest's music scene in quintessential PDX style, with gourmet food carts, reusable utensils, and lots of coffee. How else to get through 3 days of non-stop entertainment? Sage has scored a coveted place for her ground rules coffee cart thanks to her newish boyfriend Bax, who's friendly with Maya, one of the musicians performing. The festivities begin with a stream of customers, friends, and acquaintances stopping by for Ground Rules' world-class blends expertly brewed by Sage and her newest barista. But there are tensions between Maya and her former bandmates, who are on the cusp of making it big, and with Ian, the band's manager. When Sage stumbles upon Ian's dead body in the nearby woods, his hand still clutching one of her coffee mugs, it's clear that someone's grudge boiled over into murder. Can Sage work out who's responsible before another innocent life fades out and the curtain falls on Campathon and maybe her own future? For good? I know there was at least one other because it says so on the back. I think this is the second one. It looks like it is. So this is book 2 in her series. It looks like book 1 is called Fresh Brewed Murder. This one is the second book called Double Shot Death. It is a cozy mystery. Obviously, person runs a little coffee cart. Washington, I'm not letting you go because you want to jump up and get all over my desk. Okay, I'm going to do this last green book, and then I'm going to have to cut my footage together because I have to go get Caden now, and this cat is going to jump. And we don't want that because he's old. And then last but not least, I have this book. I know there's a lot of pink, but I would also count this as light green because there is a lot of green all over the place. This is a romance book. This is called Jane in Love by Rachel Givney. Set in England as well. Bath, England, 1803. At 28, Jane Austen prefers walking and reading to balls. She also dreams of someday publishing her carefully crafted stories. Above all, she wants love. In grave danger of becoming a spinster, Jane goes searching for a radical solution and by accident time travels. She lands in Bath, England, present day, the film set of Northanger Abbey. As Jane acquaints herself with the horseless carriages and shocking fashions of the 21st century, she also discovers she's now a published author, a famous one. She befriends Sophia Wentworth, a fading Hollywood actress starring in the new period film, who offers to help Jane return to her own time. Then Jane meets Fred, Sophia's brother, who has the audacity to be handsome, clever, and kind-hearted. But when Jane starts falling in love with Fred, disaster strikes. All her books begin disappearing from the shelves. Jane realizes that the longer she remains in the 21st century, the more she will erase herself from history. Jane must decide, is a chance at love worth staying lost in time? Romance. And with that, I shall return. All right, I'm back. No time has passed for you. Literally a second. But we're back now. Next color is bright yellow. And I have 3 options again. I've got one that I own. I was given this book on my birthday this year. This is Going Dutch by James Gregor. This was a blind date with a book that my friend, she makes them. I feel like I keep saying I'm going to link her channel or her shop, and then I keep forgetting to do that. So this is 20-something graduate student Richard has plenty of sources of anxiety and exhaustion, countless dead in forays into the gay dating scene, the lonely but never alone angst of living in New York, and crippling writer's block that threatens daily to derail his graduate funding. Shall I bring this so I don't have to yell? Broke, directionless, and desperately single, Richard befriends Anne, his brilliant classmate who offers to help. him write his thesis in exchange for his company despite his fairly obvious sexual orientation. It doesn't hurt that Anne easily folds Richard into her affluent lifestyle. What begins initially as a transactional friendship blooms gradually into something more romantically complex. But then a one-swipe stand with an attractive, successful lawyer named Blake becomes serious, and Richard is suddenly entangled in both Blake's conventional, genuine affection and Anne's web of privilege, brilliance, and oddly, her unabashed acceptance of Richard's flaws. As the two relationships reach the point of serious commitment, Richard finds himself on a hilariously complicated collision course of modern romance, one that brings about surprising revelations. Going Dutch is an incisive portrait of relationships in an age of digital romance abundance, but it's also a heartfelt and humorous exploration of love and sexuality, as well as a poignant meditation on the things emotionally ravenous people seek from and do to each other. With his debut, James Gregor announces himself with levity and a fresh, exciting voice. When was this published? 2019. Fairly new. So, bright yellow. Next, we have Kill the Farm Boy by Delilah S. Dawson and Kevin Hearn. Now, if this feels familiar to you, it's because I've already read this book. And I believe I've talked about it. This is considered a science fiction. It does say we're going to need a bigger goat. I read this last year, and it's a ride. This is a reimagining of traditional fairy tales. So I'm laughing because I can remember reading this book, and I did really enjoy it. It made me laugh out loud at points. So just once upon a time in a faraway kingdom, a hero, the chosen one, was born, and so begins every fairy tale ever told. This is not that fairy tale. There is a chosen one, but he is unlike any one who has ever been chosen. And there is a faraway kingdom, but you have never been to a magical world quite like the land of Pell. There, when a quest goes painfully awry, it's up to a talking goat, a mighty warrior who resents her chainmail bikini, an assassin with a fear of chickens, and a cursed, fuzzy-tailed bard to set everything aright. Beset by evils and the Dark Lord Toby, this intrepid company journeys toward the most peculiar happily ever after that ever once upon a timed. It also is a series. This is the first book in a series of like the Adventures in Pell or the Land of Pell or something like that. But I think you could read it just as a standalone because that's what I've done. I have not picked up any other book. I think it's a duology, but I have not picked up anything else. It is The Tales of Pell is the series. It is hilarious. There is a map. I printed out the map and I have it hanging at my desk at work because it looks like a standard map, but you have places named like we have the Serpent Sea, here be monsters, really specifically right here, not kidding. You have the Morning Wood, which I know I talked about, which is next door to the city of Foreskins and the town of Grunting. There's also a city called Fapsworth. I am a child. We also have the Llama Drama. There's just a lot. But I did read this book. I loved this book. I do recommend it if you get stuck trying to find a book that will fit. This edition is bright yellow, and this book is uproariously funny. I listened to the audiobook, which I also highly recommend because the narrator is spectacular. And then finally, I have this book. It caught my eye on my shelf, and so I grabbed it. It is called The Fugitivities by Jessie McCarthy. I have no idea what it's about, so let's find out together. We've got a singular and powerful debut novel about a young black man learning the difficulties of forming your own identity when society has already assigned you one. Like most recent college graduates, Jonah Winters is unsure of what's next. A young black American raised in France and living in New York City, he tries on a couple of careers only to find that nothing feels right. And as Jonah struggles to envision his future, he feels pressured by his friends and family to put his community's fight for equality before his search for self. But a chance encounter with an ex-NBA player with his own regrets inspires Jonah to take his life into his own hands. As he makes and breaks friendships, reflects on his past relationships, and learns to rely on himself, Jonah forms an understanding of self, community, and freedom that is rarely afforded to young black men. So, bright yellow covers. Dishwasher. And then finally, the color is peach. All of these that I found just coincidentally are YA or young adult novels. So if that's your interest, it seems like peach is the color for YA. I've got Furia by, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to do my best. Yamile Saeed Mendez. I'm so sorry. Someone help me. We've got, in Rosario, Argentina, Camila Hassan leads a double life. At home, she is a careful daughter, living within her mother's narrow expectations in the shadow of her soccer star brother and under the abusive rule of her short-tempered father. On the field, she is La Furia, a powerhouse of skill and talent. When her team qualifies for the South American tournament, Camila gets the chance to see just how far those talents can take her. But the path ahead isn't easy. Her parents would never allow a girl to play football, and she needs the permission to go any farther. And the boy she once loved is back in town. Since he left, Diego has become an international football celebrity, but things have changed for Camila too. She has her own passions and ambitions, and Furia cannot be denied. As her life becomes more complicated, Camila is forced to face her secrets and make her way in a world unprepared for the dreams of a girl like her. Furia is an achingly real and powerfully told story about family, identity, first love, and of course, football. It will resonate with anyone who has been told she can't have it all, especially those who have gone out to get it anyway. So, powerful stuff. Whoops. Not the books! Why did I think I could hold them in my lap? I don't know. Next, we've got Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. This is a cute cover. I switched hands. Can I do this? This is about, let's see. We have Ophelia Rojas knows what she likes. Her best friends, Cuban food, rose, gardening, and boys. Way too many boys. Her friends and parents make fun of her endless stream of crushes, but Ophelia is a romantic at heart. She couldn't change even if she wanted to. So when she finds herself thinking more about cute, quiet Talia Sanchez than the loss of a perfect prom with her ex-boyfriend, seeds of doubt take root in Ophelia's firm image of herself. Add to that the impending end of high school and the fracturing of her once solid friend group, and things are spiraling a little out of control. But the course of love and sexuality never did run smooth. As her secrets begin to unravel, Ophelia must make a choice between clinging to the fantasy version of herself she's always imagined, or bending everyone's expectations to rediscover who she really is after all. Cute. And then my final peach cover, different form of peach, a little bit darker. It's showing up a lot darker on my screen than it does in real life. Could someone argue this is orange? Yes, absolutely, but I would also count this as peach. This is book number 1 of the Illuminae files. This is Illuminae. It is written by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I have read this book before, and I've always wanted to read this trilogy. I just didn't get around to it, and it's been a couple years since I read this. So, we've got... This morning, Katie thought breaking up with Ezra was the hardest thing she'd have to do today. This afternoon, her planet was invaded. The year is 2575, and 2 rival megacorporations, blank and blank, are at war with a planet that's little more than an ice-covered speck at the edge of the universe. Too bad nobody thought to warn the people living on it. With enemy fire raining down on them, exes, Katie and Ezra, who are barely even talking to each other, are forced to fight their way onto the evacuating fleet with an enemy warship in hot pursuit. But the warship is the least of their problems. A deadly blank has broken out and is mutating, with terrifying results. The fleet's AI, which should be protecting them, may actually be their enemy, and nobody in charge will say what the blank is going on. As Katie hacks into a tangled web of data to find out the truth, it's clear only one person can help her bring it all to light. The ex-boyfriend she swore she'd never speak to again. Briefing note. Told through a fascinating dossier of hacked documents, including email schematics, military files, IMs, medical reports, interviews, and more, Illuminae is the first book in a heart-stopping, high-octane trilogy about lives interrupted, the price of truth, and the courage of everyday heroes. So yes, this is told, it's mixed media format, so even that you can kind of see. I will flip through it. There are documents. Like that's a screen grab. This is a email chat log. We've got another chat log. This is a document report. Sorry, sometimes I forget where my camera angle is. We've got a printout officer's report. So it is mixed media. Like I said, this is the book 1 in the trilogy. It is quite a long book. Or at least it has a lot of pages, but a lot of it is told, because it's told in that mixed media. I remember this page. This is one of my favorite pages. It reads pretty quickly. It's a really cool book. And if mixed media is your thing, go for it. I personally will be reading for the cover color challenge. I am going to choose the bright yellow, and if you hadn't guessed it, now you are. Knowing for sure, I'm reading Going Dutch, because it is my personal copy. I do not read it. I have not read it, and it is one of my 24 and 24. Don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about with that. I will have a video at some point about my 24 and 24. But this is my cover color choice. Next, we've got a book set in space. The next prompt, the reading challenge prompt, is, like I said, a book set in space. Again, I've got 3 options for you. And I actually have a wide range. I've got a juvenile, middle grade, a YA, and an adult book, because I want to show that there is a gamut. You don't have to just be stuck with adult science fiction. So this book is called Asking for Trouble. This is a juvenile book. This is actually a sequel. My son has read the first book, I believe, and really enjoyed it, so I probably will give him this to read while I have it checked out from the library. But the first book is called Trouble in the Stars, and this is the second book, and basically there's this crew that are on space missions and stuff, and I could read you what this book is about, but it would make absolutely no sense because you'd have to read the first book. But it is set in space, and it is a really cute middle grade juvenile series. Then I've got a YA book. You probably are familiar with this. This is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles, which are fairy tale reimaginings. As you also know, my jam. Love fairy tale retellings. This is book 1, like I said, and this is... I'll just read you the back. I don't know why I'm stalling. Even in the future, the story begins with once upon a time. Humans and androids crowd the raucous streets of New Beijing. A deadly plague ravages the population. From space, a ruthless lunar people watch, waiting to make their move. No one knows that Earth's fate hinges on one girl. 16-year-old Cinder, a gifted mechanic, is a cyborg. She's a second-class citizen with a mysterious past and is reviled by her stepmother. But when her life becomes intertwined with the handsome Prince Kai's, she suddenly finds herself at the center of an intergalactic struggle and a forbidden attraction. Caught between duty and freedom, loyalty and betrayal, she must uncover secrets about her past in order to protect her world's future. Because there is something unusual about Cinder, something that others would kill for. So... like I said, this is book 1 in that series. It's pretty good. I've read this book before. I've started the second book, but I never finished it. My husband and I were reading them together, actually. And this is a really cool edition because there's bonus art and stuff. So this is a Cinderella reimagining. but it also takes place in space. There's stuff with the moon, or a moon. I know that. It's kind of blank for me, but maybe I'll eventually get back to that series. And then finally, I have this book. This is an adult novel. This is How to Mars by David Ebenbach. So this is... I have no idea what this book is, so let's find out. For the 6 lucky scientists selected by the Destination Mars Corporation, a one-way ticket to Mars is an absolute no-brainer. The incredible opportunity is definitely worth the absurdly tedious screening process. Perhaps worth the bizarre mandates of an eccentric billionaire. Possibly worth constant surveillance by reality TV show cameras. But even on Mars, scientists can get bored of science. Tempers begin to fray, unsanctioned affairs blossom, and perfectly good equipment begins to fail. The Marsonauts discover something that wasn't in the Destination Mars handbook, something their training simply cannot explain. Irreverent, poignant, and perfectly weird, How to Mars is a romp with heart that harkens to Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, MTV's The Real World, and Mythbusters. So, I am torn. Part of me wants to read this. It seems nice and short. You can make this a book group book. It is 236 pages, not including the afterword. It's only like 240 pages, including that. This also seems pretty fun. It looks like it's kind of a mixed media at times as well. This was 2021. Because it's like, okay, we've got chapters, but then we have parts of like their handbook in it. And then just flipping through, I just saw like some like graphs, like almost like a textbook like page of like instructions and tables and things. So I could definitely see me enjoying this. So I'm either going to read this or I'm going to reread this. I probably should not reread this right now. I'm so behind in books. I do not need a nearly 600-page book on my lap when I have so many other things I need to read. So please tell me down in the comments to be a grown-up and not reread this YA book. I also can't be starting another series right now. Like, I have no time for a series. This is just not gonna work. I should pick the 200-page book, the less than 250-page book. I really should pick this. I'm struggling. Help me. And then finally, the word in the title challenge part for this is that the word is year, Y-E-A-R. You need to read a book that has the word year in the title. It cannot be years, plural. It is singular year. So, and again, I have options to show you. First and foremost, you've seen me talk about it. I've mentioned it a couple times, I think. This is The 7-Year Slip. I am currently reading it. I'm not even halfway through. I'm supposed to have this finished like yesterday because this was my family book club pick and everyone else has finished it but me. So I really need to get a move on, except for I've been sucked into doing this and other things. This has not been a good reading month for me. You'll find out later in my March wrap up. But I've been stuck doing this and I need to finish this, but these both are very important for book clubs for other reasons. Because one is my own business and one is my family's business. I need to get a move on both of those. I'll finish that. This one I need to then work on. But it is The 7-Year Slip. It has the word year in the title. I've talked about it. Clementine has been given her aunt's apartment with one little caveat that the apartment can slip through time and it goes back in time 7 years in her past where she meets a young man that was like subletting her aunt's apartment. And her aunt's one rule is like, don't fall in love in the apartment. Will she break it? My next, this is a horror novel. This is called The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is also a fantastic book. I read this book a few years ago. I listened to the audiobook, which I also highly recommend. This is called The Year. I just said what it's called. I'm repeating myself. This is a young woman living in a rigid, puritanical society discovers dark powers within herself in the stunning feminist fantasy debut. In the lands of Bethel, where the prophet's word is law, Emmanuel Moore's very existence is blasphemy. Her mother's union with an outsider of a different race cast her once proud family into disgrace, so Emmanuel does her best to worship the Father, follow holy protocol, and lead a life of submission, devotion, and absolute conformity, like all the other women in the settlement. But a mishap lures her into the forbidden dark woods surrounding Bethel, where the first prophet once chased and killed 4 powerful witches. Their spirits are still lurking there, and they bestow a gift on Emmanuel, the journal of her dead mother, who Emmanuel is shocked to learn once sought sanctuary in the wood. Fascinated by the secrets in the diary, Emmanuel finds herself struggling to understand how her mother could have consorted with the witches. But when she begins to learn grim truths about the church and its history, she realizes the true threat to Bethel is its own darkness. And she starts to understand that if Bethel is to change, it must begin with her. This is an excellent book. I really, really enjoyed this book when I read it. And then, finally, we've got My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I don't know how to say that last name, and I apologize. This book is adult fiction, and it is a shocking and strangely tender novel about a young woman's efforts to duck the world by embarking on an extended hibernation with the help of one of the worst psychiatrists in the annals of history and the battery of medicines she prescribes. Our narrator has many of the advantages in life. On the surface, young, thin, pretty, a recent Columbia graduate, she lives in an apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, paid for, like the rest of her needs, by her inheritance. But there is a vacuum at the heart of things, and it isn't just the loss of her parents while she was in college, or the miserable way her Wall Street sometime boyfriend treats her, or her sadomasochistic relationship with her alleged best friend. It's the year 2000 in a city aglitter with wealth and possibility. What could be so terribly wrong? My Year of Rest and Relaxation is a powerful answer to that very question, through the story of a year spent by a young woman under the influence of a truly mad combination of drugs prescribed to heal people from alienation and existential ennui. Moshfegh shows us how reasonable, even necessary, that alienation sometimes is. Tender and blackly funny, merciless and compassionate, it is a showcase for the gifts and the rewards of one of our major writers working at the height of her powers. Mouthful. But that's what this is, and this is my choice because I've read the other things or I am currently reading the thing. So this will be the book that I read. Drink break. I'm drinking water in my 40-ounce. This looks like a Stanley. It's not a Stanley. This is from The Darling Effect. I got it at Books A Million. But it keeps my water cold, and I like flowers. So, moving on. That is all of Magical Stitches. What's next? Because I have other book clubs I'm in. So, let's discuss my other book clubs. Next, for our family book club, I mentioned this was the pick. This was my sister-in-law's pick for March, which means I get to pick the next book, which is crazy to me. And I was like, what am I going to pick? So I went and I looked up at my shelves and I decided to pick something off of my shelves, which I tried to do because I want to read off of my shelves. I went and picked one of my 24 and 24. And so we are going to be reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I believe my sister bought me this. I don't remember. I think she did. This is a dazzling novel about all the choices that go into a life well lived. Between life and death, there is a library. Up until now, Nora Seed's life has been full of misery and regret. She feels she has let everyone down, including herself. But things are about to change. When she finds herself in the Midnight Library, she has a chance to make things right. The books in the Midnight Library enable Nora to live as if she had done things differently. Each one contains a different life, a possible world in which she made different choices that played out in an infinite number of ways, affecting everyone she knew as well as many people she never met. With the help of an old friend, she can now undo every decision she regrets as she tries to work out her perfect life.
But things aren't always what she imagined they'd be, and soon her choices place the library and herself in extreme danger. Before time runs out, she must answer the ultimate question: what is the best way to live? So, this is my pick, what I will be reading with my family. If you would like to join in and read another book that I've picked, feel free to do so. Next is a book club that my local library puts on. They are doing a decade challenge this year, meaning that they have divided the different months into different years, and each month is a different decade, and they pick a book that goes into that decade. If you don't like the book that they've picked, you're free to read anything you want, ideally with the goal being that it is set in the decade that they've chosen. So, for example, in March were the decades the 1920s and the 1930s. In April, it is the 1940s, which means I need to change my thing because I've written it down wrong. I have that it's the 1940s and the 1950s, and that's not correct. It's just the 1940s. And the book that they are going to be reading is The Real Lolita. I will show you a photo of that. I've got everything everywhere. This is the book. Sorry, it's kind of wonky. This is The Real Lolita, The Kidnapping of Sally Horner, and the Novel That Scandalized the World by Sarah Weinman. So this book, so I don't have a physical copy of it on me. The next several I don't have one, but I'll just tell you what it's about anyways. This is Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita is one of the most beloved and notorious novels of all time, and yet very few of its readers know that the subject of the novel was inspired by a real-life case, the 1948 abduction of 11-year-old Sally Horner. Weaving together suspenseful crime narrative, cultural and social history, and literary investigation, The Real Lolita tells Sally Horner's full story for the very first time. Drawing upon extensive investigations, legal documents, public records, and interviews with remaining relatives, Sarah Weinman uncovers how much Nabokov knew of the Sally Horner case and the efforts he took to disguise that knowledge during the process of writing and publishing Lolita. Sally Horner's story echoes the stories of countless girls and women who never had the chance to speak for themselves, but diving deeper in the publication history of Lolita and restoring Sally to her rightful place in the lore of the novel's creation, The Real Lolita casts a new light on the dark inspiration for a modern classic. Interesting. So, I thought that sounded cool. I will be reading it. My next book club that I am a participant in is the Read with Pride, which is also a book club put on by my local library, where the focus is on LGBTQ plus literature, and the April pick is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This has been on my TBR for a while, like since it came out. Let me tell you about it. 17-year-old Lily Hugh can't remember exactly when the feeling took root, that desire to look, to move closer, to touch. Whenever it started growing, it definitely bloomed the moment she and Kathleen Miller walked under the flashing neon sign of a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. Suddenly, everything seemed possible. But America in 1954 is not a safe place for two girls to fall in love, especially not in Chinatown. Red Scare paranoia threatens everyone, including Chinese Americans like Lily. With deportation looming over her father, despite his hard-won citizenship, Lily and Kath risk everything to let their love see the light of day. Super cute. I know I have borrowed this from the library before, and I didn't get a chance to read it, so I'm excited to read it now. Next is my own personal hellhole that I have created for myself, is the 2022 Top 20 Horror Books of the Year. I gotta get a move on. I've said this so many months in a row, and yet here I am still floundering away. So what is my goal? What have I decided to do to kick myself into gear? I basically sat down and I went, if I were to read one book on this list for the next month, And I planned it out. Said, okay, so let's say that Gallows Hill was supposed to be January, right? And then I just plugged and played along my list, which means that Gallows Hill was supposed to be in January, which meant that Manhunt was supposed to be February. March was supposed to be Just Like Mother, which means April is The Violence. And I'm like, you know what? Let's stop. Let's give up on Gallows Hill for a little bit. I don't know what's going on with me and Darcy, but apparently we're not friends. So I'm like, let's just put that on the back burner. Let's move on. Let's move on with our lives. Why not? So I've got The Violence, which, surprise, surprise, this name's going to sound familiar, by Delilah S. Dawson, also of Kill the Farm Boy. Completely different tones, I'm assuming, tone shift, because this is a horror novel. This is the cover. It is bright red. I have heard about this book. You probably have too. It's a chunk. I just saw it in person though, and I was like, ooh, why is it a thick boy? Let me tell you. They call it The Violence, a strange epidemic that causes the infected to experience sudden bursts of animalistic rage with no provocation and no memory of their crimes. While it tears the nation apart, one woman sees something unlikely in the chaos, an opportunity. Chelsea Martin has been a prisoner in her own home for too long. Her controlling husband has manipulated her for years, cutting her off from all support. Her narcissistic mother is no help, and her teen daughter is realizing she might be falling into the same trap when her once adoring boyfriend shows a dark side. But when the violence erupts, Chelsea creates a plan to liberate herself and her daughters once and for all. What follows is a shocking and thrilling journey as 3 generations of women navigate a world in which they are finally empowered to fight back. Somewhere along the journey from her magazine-ready Tampa home to the professional wrestling ring, Chelsea becomes her own liberator, an avatar of revenge and hope, and a new heroine for a new world. I think it's shelved in the science fiction section at my library, which is interesting. And it's considered, it was in the top 20 horror, which I believe this starts us into the top 10. So I'm definitely a little bit more eager to get to it if it puts me in the top 10. And I think I also want to do like a reading hella long episode all about this top 20. These Goodreads challenges. Blah. So maybe that will force me to get this reading done if I have created a whole video concept that requires me to read these books. Then I'm alternating. So nonfiction one month, something out of my comfort zone. The next month, we are back to nonfiction in the month of April. And I am yes, technically the Decades Challenge book is a nonfiction, but I am not counting that. I am going to be reading Atomic Habits. And I am picking that because my husband read it recently, and he has been asking me since like January or February to read it as well because he wants to discuss it. So I said, fine. But it is Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones by James Clear. You can see nothing. Yep. Oh, nope. You're not going to be able to see this cover. I mean, you've probably seen it. It's not like it's brand new. I think it's fairly old. There's been a crap ton of copies of it. Whatever. My brain is not wanting to brain. He signed up for Audible because he's not a reader of physical books, but he will listen to audiobooks. So he uses Audible. I stay out of it, but I can have access to his Audible, and then I can listen to them after he's done with them. So this is all about making changes to your habits, obviously. I don't want to read the full synopsis because that's what it is. It's basically learn how to make time for new habits, even when life gets crazy, overcome a lack of motivation and willpower, design your environment to make success easier, and get back on track when you fall off course, and much more. So yes, it's all about using psychology, biology, and neuroscience to create an easy to understand guide for making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. So I said I would do it. Here we go. And then, of course, I will be trying to do my Prime Reads book, but I don't know what that is yet because the Prime books haven't come out yet. They come out on the 1st, and this video will be up before the 1st. So there we go. This video has gone on way longer than it needs to go on, but I think before I can be done, there is someone else who wants to share with you what he will be reading in April. You coming? He obviously didn't pick up that that was his cue. All right, what will you be reading in April? What is your goal? What?
To read a 500-page book.
That's your goal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what will you be reading?
The Invention of Hugo Cabret. Let me go get it.
I thought he had it on it. That was silly of me to make that assumption. Take a drink while we're waiting for Keaton. Also, isn't it crazy how tall he is? Isn't it? No. Alright, show us your book. The Invention of Hugo
Cabret.
By Brian Selznick. What's it about?
Orphan, clock keeper, and thief. Hugo lives in the walls of a busy Paris train station where survival depends on secrets and anonymity. But when his world suddenly interlocks, like the gears of the clocks he keeps, with an eccentric, bookish girl and a bitter old man who runs a toy booth in the train station. Hugo's undercover life and his most precious secret are put in jeopardy. A cryptic drawing, a treasure notebook, a stolen key, a mechanical man, and a hidden message from Hugo's dead father form the backbone of this intricate, tender, and spellbinding mystery.
Very cool. I'm excited for you. We'll have to check in with him at the end of April and see how much progress he made on his goal.
Yeah,
well, don't do that.
I'm trying to see because it shows a picture of him.
Yes, that's the camera up there.
Right there. Oh my gosh, I cannot do this.
Yes, we see him. Thank you.
That's Hugo Cabret.
All right. And with that, it's time for me to be done. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back soon enough with yet another video. My March wrap-up is coming, and I also plan on doing like a quarterly check-in. So, yeah, that's coming at some point. I will talk to you all very, very soon. In the meantime, happy reading, happy watching, happy listening, happy stitching, happy doing whatever it is that makes you happy doing. Be easy with your hearts.